Well, good morning and welcome to our 51st Coffee with the Commissioner event this morning. It's 6:30, it's Wednesday, so we're doing a coffee, and the topic that everyone's discussing, that's on everyone's mind is COVID-19. We've done a number of these with a lot of different participants. Last week, I'll just point out, was fascinating. We had a tremendous coffee. We had a great discussion about COVID-19 and the hospitals and the impacts that this terrible pandemic is having, and that coffee has been shared over 100 times and viewed 20,000 times. It just really went quite viral here locally, and that's in District 1. So we're greatly appreciative of the Baptist Hospital for their appearance last week and the two doctors that joined us. It was just really a great discussion. Lots of questions were answered that, frankly, I had been asking for a long time, and it was great to really speak with doctors. This morning, we had intended to have Sheriff Morgan from the Escambia County Sheriff's Office here this morning. Unfortunately, Monday he had to bow out. He had an issue that came up, but in his stead, he sent Dawn Braswell, who's the HR director. She's here this morning, HR director of Escambia County Sheriff's Office, and then Mr. Marcus Faulkner is here as well. He's the risk manager for Escambia County Sheriff's Office. They're up in the corner there with the masks on. Appreciate y'all being here this morning, and we'll get the sheriff out here. Hopefully, sometime real soon we can talk to him about all the impacts of COVID-19 on he and his men. In addition, we've also brought in today, in the sheriff's absence, we brought in Rich Powell, who works for the county. He's the director of corrections. He runs the jail and the road camp. And we're going to talk with him about the challenges COVID-19 has posed to him and his operations. Also, we do have Janice Gilley, our county administrator. She's here this morning. And then Eric Gilmore is our emergency manager. He is actually joining us from Tallahassee, where he is about to attend a meeting. He's very limited on his time, so I'd like to go ahead and get started with him briefly, so we could let him go and he could attend his meeting over there in Tallahassee for us. So Eric, we'll start with you this morning. Good morning. Thank you for being here. And what's the latest on COVID-19 here in Escambia County? Anything new to report for us?
Nothing new. We did creep up over 101 deaths yesterday, which is unfortunate. But the hospital beds seem to be increasing. We get more room in the hospitals. The ICU beds seem to be stabilizing. It was 9 yesterday, I do believe, that we had hospital beds. So things are going as good as they possibly can, as long as we don't see huge spikes. I am here at the state EOC. I was brought in to help out with hurricane or tropical storm, hurricane again, ICAS. Anyway, so while I was here, it turned into a non-event for the coast of Florida, a little coastal erosion. So they've asked me to stay on through Sunday, and I'll be assisting logistics. So I'm doing logistics for the state right now. So all the PPE we have received and seen in Escambia County comes from the logistics section chief, and I get to see where all the warehouses are and where everything's at. And I helped set up two new mobile drive-up sites yesterday that'll be in South Florida. Our site, UWF site, Sunday we was told and had to reprioritize some of the equipment we were sending around, but the UWF site is going to start antibody testing this week, which was interesting. So all your mobile sites will start doing antibody testing, which is to include our UWF site. So that'll be something new that we'll be providing in Escambia County.
And before I continue on, I was remiss in also recognizing another special guest that's here today from our jail, Allison Burgess. And Allison, tell us what you do for the jail, and tell us what your expertise is.
Right. I'm a nurse practitioner, background in family nurse practitioner. I've been with Escambia County for the past 5 years.
And you work primarily with Rich Powell over at the jail?
Yes, at the main jail. Mm-hmm.
Okay, fantastic. I apologize for missing you, but I'm glad that you're here, because I'll definitely have some questions for you this morning. Eric, I didn't mean to interrupt you. And I just want to take a moment again to tell everyone that's watching, Eric and his team and Janice, they've put together a dashboard that's fantastic. It's phenomenal. You go to myescambia.com. It's on the very first drop down. Hit the COVID-19 dashboard. It gives you everything right there: hospitalization, ventilators, the number of cases, the number of deaths. I mean, it's got all the information. The only thing we're still missing, and I keep pressing for it, and one day we'll get it, is the recovered information. And I know the state of Florida doesn't want to track that, or for whatever the case might be, but I think a lot of people see that giant number of near 8,000 cases. But we know that's from March to now. All those cases are not still sick. A lot of them have resolved. So I think a lot of jurisdictions, other states are showing that, and after 6 weeks after a diagnosis, we know that in most cases it's resolved, or in some very, very rare circumstances, the patient dies. So I really think that's something we need to add to the dashboard. So Eric, any movement on getting that done for us?
So I'm taking advantage while I'm here in Tallahassee. So I went over to DOH while I was here, and we had that long discussion. DOH in Tallahassee, DOH here, state DOH, they're working with CDC to come up with a definition for recovery. So I'm hoping that we'll come to a resolve, and that statewide we'll have a definition for recovery. And these are some of the things that DOH will start tracking and doing those things. So they are in talks with CDC. They're trying to come to some common ground of what recovery is, whether it's time frame, 2 negative tests, which we see in CDC say they don't recommend 2 negative tests now. It's just 10 days since last sign of symptoms, and then 3 days no supportive medications or anything, and reducing of symptoms. So I'm hoping that DOH will come to a definition of recovery, and they can start tracking that and helping us out as well with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to get Eric to also mention that he's also, while he's been there, he's been working on trying to get us some more services in this area. And actually, Commissioner Burgash, one of the services that he's looking to provide is going to be provided specifically in your district. And so, Eric, I didn't know if you could mention that. I did talk to the new director of DOH last night, and she briefed me a little bit on your work with them. And I didn't know, I know it's not going to happen today, but I thought you might want to let the commissioner know what you've been working on.
Absolutely. So Sunday, when I arrived Sunday, to even go into the state EOC, you're required to have a COVID test. So I got tested. The test that they did, they have a mobile lab here on site. I got my PCR test result in 45 minutes.
Wow.
So that asset, that bus, is now going to be traveling west, and we're going to find, I've worked with DOH and Marie Mott, the director of the health department, or administrator of the health department, and she's trying to find locations, and we're working on putting it at the equestrian center for one day.
Fantastic.
So we can get a rapid PCR test real time and know if they're positive or not.
And
that would be fantastic. Go ahead.
And one of the reasons we were specifically thinking of your area is when you have the rapid test, you're helping people that are getting to work. So that's one of the issues that we've had with businesses and with other folks, is getting that turnaround, because if you don't have staff that can come in and work, and they're not going to get their results for 8 to 10 days, that's hurting the businesses, it's hurting the employee, it's hurting the economy. And so we knew that your area was an area where you have a lot of residents that are, working residents that can't sit in a line for 5 or 6 hours and then wait 8 or 9 days to get a result. So we knew that was one of the areas that in your specific region would be one that would probably be a good area. So I'm glad that DOH, has discovered that was also a good idea.
Oh, well, I can't tell you, I'm ecstatic. That's great news, Eric and Janice. I'm happy to hear it. I know the residents out there will be very happy to hear it. Let me ask you, will there be a requirement? Do you have to be a resident of the area, or can anyone from Muscogee County just go show up, and will they be able to wait for the results, or will they just be, okay, so you'll be able to go there? Wow, 45 minutes. And what will...
Go ahead.
No, what will the capacity be? How many tests will we have because I know that's been an issue, the capacity. Oops, we're out of tests, and then you waited in line and you can't get in. What's the capacity going to be on that?
So the bus pulls up. The bus is nothing more than a laboratory, so you don't go into the bus. They put the tents outside the bus. The nurses they collect their information, and they do a nasal swab. The capacity is going to be about 250 people. They could do about 250 people per day, 250 people per day. The test is 45 minutes. So what they do is they took my phone information, my email address and everything. And I actually received a text and a phone call from the individual that my test was negative. So you don't have to sit on site and wait. You do your test, give your information, drive off, you go do what you got to do. And then in 45 minutes to an hour, you'll get your information. It was just that
amazing. And are they going to prioritize symptomatic patients? I've heard that some of the state assets, they're now moving toward prioritizing and people that have symptoms, the aged, and then the very young. So folks that are working age, waiting in the long line, what's going to be the protocols there?
I don't believe that they're going to have asymptomatic. Asymptomatic is just going to be first come, first serve. Anybody,
I like that.
Unlike the walk up, the pop up, and the drive through sites. So,
okay, wow, Eric, that's amazing information. I know you got to get rolling. I appreciate you logging on this morning. Thanks for all your diligent efforts during this last tropical storm. Thank God it didn't come here. Feel bad for the folks that got hit. And we'll see you next week. You have a good trip to Tallahassee. Now I want to transition over to our special guest from the sheriff's office. Obviously, I had a list of questions I was going to ask Sheriff Morgan. It's unfortunate he couldn't be here, and hopefully we can get him on an upcoming program, because I know, as I say, we've done a lot of these shows about various aspects of the community that have been impacted by COVID-19, and I had a list of questions, and so you guys are here though. So let me ask you some of the questions I was going to ask Sheriff Morgan. What has been the biggest single impact of COVID-19 on what you guys do over there at the sheriff's office? Dawn, I'll throw that question to you.
Well, normal operations changed for us early on in March. We started meeting and discussing that life was going to change as an officer and as a civilian in our community. So just pushing out a lot of correspondence in the beginning, encouraging mask wearing, and of course the extra sanitation and social distancing as much as possible. But for an officer reacting, if they don't have all of their personal protective equipment on hand immediately, they're not going to think to grab it and put it on. So in that instance, Marcus immediately started ordering and preparing our employee base with all of the equipment they needed. So life has changed for us drastically. And we have, you don't go outside of your office in our building without a mask on. So you should see everyone in our department masked up.
Well, and I know, what you guys do, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, but oftentimes your officers out in the field will be in the unfortunate circumstance. You'll be dealing with a suspect and you've got to put hands on it. You got to apprehend them. So the PPE obviously is critical. Are you finding that the officers now when they're responding to a call, they're getting the mask on? I mean, I know before they obviously had to have the gloves on for the bloodborne pathogens, and I'm sure they're trained, but this new dimension of wearing a face covering, are the officers doing that when they're responding to a call, getting the face mask on?
Yes, they are. And like I said, we put a lot of protocols in place early on. I guess one thing you learn in life is you learn by your mistakes. We've had quite a few. We had an entire unit just about taken out by a warrant service at a home that was infected. And that was in probably the early mid-June, when everything was kind of lax in the county and everybody was kind of thinking that we were in phase 2 and things would be, going fine and we'd be able to open up everything soon. And unfortunately, like I said, we had an entire unit taken out by a warrant service. So instilling with everybody that this is not a joke, it's a very serious infection. And I think a lot of our officers and team members learned that we've got to wear the PPE at all times and be protective.
Commissioner, here at the sheriff's office, they hire professionals. I mean, our guys are professionals. They go out every day. They do a job that's thankless sometimes, but they do it very well. And a lot of the problems that we had early on was the same things that you encountered: the unknown, people giving misinformation, things that were out there that, people saying one thing, somebody else saying for convenience, they would say something else. But like Dawn said, after you have one or two of your guys that come out and say, guys, this is no joke, it didn't take long at all. Our men and women wear their PPE. They're happy to have it. They're thankful to have it. The sheriff and the chief have provided well for our people, and they have gone out of their way to make sure that our men and women are safe so they can go out and do their job. Because, when it boils right down to it, regardless, at a certain point, our guys have to go out and do a job. So it's up on and I to make sure that our people are safe, and we've done our best to do that.
And Mr. Faulkner, you're the risk manager over there. So, and obviously it sounds as though you've been really proactive with getting the PPE for all the deputies. Have you run into any of those issues? I know early on there was shortages. Has the Escambia County Sheriff's Office been able to acquire enough PPE so that all the deputies have enough?
Well, we have, and it's the thanks goes to the sheriff and the chief. Like I said early on, they made it a point to say, listen, you need to have the ability to get what we need, and so they allowed me to go out and source some of these innovative products early on that people just now. I noticed yesterday a article came out that the Denver Broncos are using a MicroSure product that they basically walk their players through a misting of this MicroSure, which kills COVID. We've been using that from very early on, almost day one, for our men and women. We've got two products. We've got a MicroSure hand sanitizer that lasts 8 hours that actively kills the virus, and we've also got a MicroSure surface product that we go in and spray our building down, our high touch surfaces, our units, their equipment, and that's contributed to our curve being better than average, I would say. A lot of these products, the masks that we're wearing, are an innovative product out of the Funiac Springs. They're called Easy Wrap. They're treated with a MicroSure. They're treated with an antimicrobial. They last a year. So our guys are using them. They're very comfortable. They stretch in very unique pattern that allows them to be comfortable. Now, obviously we would rather not wear them, but if you've got to wear something, you try to get something that they can use, and it's not a one use. These last a year. So they're able to wash and hand wash and dry these things, so we're not throwing money away, but a lot of times money well spent early on is money saved in the long run, and we've seen a lot of that. We've got some of the products that a lot of the companies here locally have come by to see. We were allowed to get the Photric Smart, their artificial intelligence cameras, thermal cameras, that when you come in, if you were to walk in our building, Commissioner, you could have a cup of coffee in your hand, and this thing will focus just on your face. It doesn't pick up a hot cup of coffee. It will only pick up your temperature on your face. It hits like 30 points on your face to make sure we're getting accurate temperature. So everybody that walks in, we know that we're safe when you're coming in the building. Now, that's just one leg, but we have several things that we do early on. Again, with this MicroSure, we're allowed. I came from the airline industry years ago, and one of the products they use is an electrostatic sprayer. Victory makes it. They mist this product out. It's positively charged, so when it hits a non-positive surface, it sticks and cleans very well. And so we're using those to distribute some of these products. So again, the thanks goes to the sheriff and the chief early on for allowing us to get out and get these ahead of the curve, so we weren't like a lot of these products that we got now, those Victory sprayers that I just told you about. You cannot source those. You cannot put your hands on them, but we were able to get a supply. So we were able to get ahead of the curve a little bit.
Wow, I think the average viewer would not have known that you were taking all those steps. I think it's fascinating that they walk through a mist. At the beginning of the shift, do all the guys just walk through the mister?
That's the Denver Broncos. Now they just started using this, something we've been using for months now. They just implemented. I saw an article yesterday. So that's something the NFL team is using that we've been allowed to use for, like I said, for months. We don't run our guys through a mister, but I actually apply it, and some of the other people will apply it to our surfaces and high touch areas regularly. We were able to keep our gym open for no reason. We were able to keep it sanitized and open for our men and women to stay in shape.
Because of that product.
Around the county and state had to be closed.
Interesting. Well, I have a question for Dawn, and you may or may not be able to answer this. This is coming in from a viewer. When the officers respond, what are they finding in our area as far as clusters or groups? And are the residents responding to the county's mask up? And if they're not wearing the masks, are there areas of the county where you're seeing people not adhering to the social distancing? I mean, is that anything you all could comment on, or is that something that you would know?
Not that I'm aware of, and I wish I could answer that, but I am not aware of that.
Okay. Yeah, like I say, we were hoping to get Sheriff on here because I know he has his finger on the pulse on a lot of those. But I'm going to re-invite him maybe, as soon as he can, because I think a lot of folks would like to know. But these are fascinating details that you're providing. But when Sheriff contacted me Monday and said he wasn't going to make it, we pivoted quickly and transitioned. And because, we work hand in hand with the Escambia County Sheriff's Office on the other side of the equation. After you guys apprehend suspects, they come to our jail. And we're very delighted to have this morning the Corrections Director, Rich Powell. Good morning, Rich. And also we have Allison Burgess here this morning, and she's a nurse practitioner, and she's going to discuss. Now we're going to talk a little bit about when these prisoners come, when these inmates come to our jail. Rich, and you and I went over some questions yesterday I was going to throw at you. Never want to throw a curveball. I always want you to be prepared. So what's the number one impact COVID-19 is having on the Escambia County Jail right now?
Well, the biggest thing is right now is just managing the unknown with both our staff and the inmate population that comes through the front door. Our staff are put in a very vicarious position, knowing that it's an ebb and flow continuous in and out of the facility, book 30, release 30, that kind of mentality every day. So the disease is constantly trying to get in and in. So we're trying to catch as much of it as we can at the door by symptomatic and temperature checking and things like that. But the biggest challenge, if I was to just say a simple challenge, is just keeping staff morale at the level of a continuous state of vigilance and maintaining that awareness that because every day it's a continuous grind and it can't become routine. It just can't be another Tuesday, so to speak, every day of the week. It has to be a level of concern, at a heightened level of concern until this pandemic runs its course.
Do we, and maybe this is a question for Allison, do we check the inmates, the prisoners' temperature every day? Do we have those forehead scanners so we can, is that something that we do every day, Allison?
Yes, and so we have certain pods. If they're designated a quarantine pod, we do check them every day. If they're in the infirmary, if they're ill, I mean, they're checked multiple times a day. And so it just depends how they are.
Let me ask you, have we had any inmates in our jail that got so sick from this that we had to transfer them to the hospital?
We've had only one, and he stayed just a few days, didn't go to the ICU, anything like that, and he came right back.
Okay, well, I guess that's good, right? I mean,
That's great.
it's good that he got the treatment that he needed. Okay, well, that's interesting. Now, the question about the jail that we get in the media, they always like to lob hand grenades and throw bombs at us. But tell me about your protocol, because they think that we should go and test every single inmate. Some people believe that to be true. What is the philosophy of testing in the Escambia County Jail at the moment?
So we follow the guidelines that are put in place for healthcare by the CDC. We've consulted with Dr. Lanza. We're actually working under the guidelines of the Florida Department of Health. But testing everyone just doesn't change the plan of care. It doesn't change our action plan. And so I think right now that we're doing very well.
And let me ask you, what's our current census here in Escambia County? I know we have a number of prisoners over in Walton County, but what's our census right now, Director Powell?
The current population within all of our facilities, to include those at Walton County, is 1407 as of 06 this morning. We have 135 at Walton right now. So backing that out, we're 12 plus, nearly 13. And then again, that ebb and flow happens every day regarding that population. So, and we've been at this number for probably within a plus or minus of 50 to 100 for this whole duration since March. Once we did the initial surge, if you will, of the courts being able to remediate a bunch of cases right off the beginning. So we've been maintaining that plateau.
And how many of those are state inmates? I think that's important to realize. You might want to explain that, Chief Powell, how many we're having to hold and how many the state will take at a time.
Yeah, just the other day, our number, well, it may have fluctuated this in the last couple of days since I had the number, but we were at 75 inmates that had state sentences waiting to be transferred to the state Department of Corrections. And we're allowed to ship 15 every 3 weeks. Fortunately, Secretary Inch for Florida Department of Corrections, I made contact with him, and as we speak, we've got 30 heading there today.
Nice. Let's get them out.
So we're doing everything we can, recognizing that their numbers of concern are off the chain as well, and they're trying to control that flow coming in. That way they can manage their population a little bit, and I understand their position all too well. But however, we literally are shipping 30 right now as opposed to 15. So, and if we can keep that cycle up, we'll get it back down into a margin that's manageable.
And I know that this COVID-19 pandemic has really I just heard on the radio that about the number of court cases. It was Gene Mitchell, a defense attorney locally, was saying, these people are not getting justice. They're not getting, their due process, whatever. I mean, it's a problem, right? And so, my brother's a judge, and we talk every single day, and he's frustrated too. He's got a number of inmates sitting in our jail right now that he's desperately trying to do whatever he can to get a video conference, get all the parties there, so he can clear these people out, and he's running into gridlock of bureaucracy. Let's just use that. He can't talk about it because he's a judge, but I will. It's our jail. If we can get inmates out, and that's just one judge, how many judges are frustrated because they cannot get a video conference? Rich, would you make rooms available in our jail to help these judges do Zoom conferences or whatever they got to do, get the public defender? How can we help these judges clear out our jail and help us?
Well, we've actually set up 3 different video conference centers in the main jail, at the work annex, formerly known as the road camp, and at the work release center. So the hearings are taking place as they can, as the courts deem it necessary and can schedule them. But we've given them 3 access points to conduct hearings, and they conduct them routinely. Probably not at the pace that a defense attorney would like it, but
Right.
But there are, I agree completely that there are frustrated judges. I've heard from frustrated judges. I would love the judges to have more opportunity. I don't think that we're the holdup, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions,
Sure.
anything, but I would just say I don't think that Chief Powell and our jail are the holdup. I think there are.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No,
I
I'm not
just
saying
want to
that.
make sure that folks know we want folks to get their due process. We want them to have the
Right.
opportunity to, go wherever they need to go, whether it be released on bond or whether, and have their due process. But we're frustrated as well, because we're 6 months into this, and, I'm just concerned that the backlog is going to continue to give us potential overcrowding issues.
Exactly.
So we're very concerned.
And I want to make this point perfectly clear. I'm not casting aspersions on you, Chief, or you, Janice, or Allison, or the sheriff's office, or anyone. I just think there's a bureaucracy at work, and maybe it's with the court system. Janice, can you, because look what we're doing right here. We get up in the morning, we have a cup of coffee, we turn on Zoom. If I'm a judge, and Janice, you're the defense attorney, and Allison, you're the public defender, and Rich, look how quickly we could do this. We could use technology, and I just don't understand why we're not. I don't know why we have people languishing in our jails who, can you imagine if you were, picked up, what if you're innocent and you're sitting in jail because you can't even get, we need to leverage this technology. And so Janice, whose buttons can we press to make this happen? Because it would save us money and space if we can get these people out. Can we press the chief judge on this?
Chief Powell can answer that. I'm not sure where he is on your video. I'm trying to point.
I'm right here. I will tell you, Judge Shackford.
Contact, yeah.
I will tell you that Judge Shackford and Judge Miller have been tremendous to work with. Through them, we've been able to set these three camera systems up, and they are fully functioning and being used. Now, their pace, that's their pace. I don't control that. And I don't know if they would want to extend it more, but we're definitely amenable to it. We can find
that's the critical thing. So, and I apologize for interrupting again, but so from our perspective, if you get a phone call from the judge, from the chief judge, Shackelford, whichever judge, and they say, hey, look, we could use some more capacity at the jail. Are you saying that as a county, we have additional space and we can make more available? We can move these prisoners around and make these things happen? Well,
it depends. I got to put a caveat, depending on the inmate that they're trying to get in front of a camera. Some of the maximum custody inmates are very limited to space that we can transport them to. And you also have the privacy that is required before that. So we are limited on space, but we will do everything we can to accommodate and make more, for sure.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, okay, let's get back to, so we've got 1,400 in the jail, 130, 140 over in Walton County. So how do you keep the prisoners that might be infected, how do you keep them from infecting our guards, our employees? And I know we've had a number of them test positive. I know that we have a lot of openings for that position in the first place. I know we have, shortages among correctional officers. So how do you maintain the safety of the officers so that we don't have a staffing emergency?
Well, the great thing is we got some very professional staff. Our officers at one point we were almost 80 down because of the COVID at one time, either being positive and or waiting for results, which did create a little bit of a strain. But however, the other staff, we didn't have to reduce to a hurricane plan. Typically in a massive shortage or an outage or a planned hurricane, we would take the 4 shifts, reduce them down to 2, and have a surplus. We didn't have to do that at this point because the other staff stepped up and stayed in their rotation, but just backfilled with overtime and filled those vacancies from their own shift. And how do we protect them? It's the due diligence of the officer, recognizing the seriousness of this, maintaining the PPE requirements, and protecting themselves and their loved ones when they go home. And oddly as this is going to sound for many, the majority of the inmate population understand the severity of this as well too, because they are being affected in their own life. They're hearing from phone calls that their loved ones have it out there, so they recognize the seriousness of it as well. There's obviously some residual resistance from some of the inmate population. That's just the nature of the world we live in. But the majority of them are donning their mask as requested. If they're being moved from one location to another, they're wearing a mask. It's kind of like you at home. When you're at home, you don't wear a mask, but when you leave, you do it. So when they come out of their cell, they've got to go down to medical, they put their mask on. If they've got to go to the courtroom or one of the court hearings, then they put their mask on.
And so, Allison, as Chief Powell mentions there, we've got the masks for the inmates. In your experience treating the inmates that you see in the infirmary, are you in agreement? Most of them are complying and wearing the mask. They understand the severity?
Yes, even in our reverse isolation rooms, they are still wearing their mask in there. I mean, they're doing great. I think we're all trying to work together, and I think they understand that they need to take this seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask the question that I know is on a lot of people's minds. It's certainly on my mind. What's the number now? Out of 1,400 that we got, do we know how many of our inmates have COVID-19?
As of yesterday, our number that we're actually managing as a positive is down to 24. The rest have cycled through. The ones that we tested because they were asymptomatic, or they were symptomatic, or they were in a cell that we had a positive come out of. The rest of them have cycled through, and we're down to managing 24, and it may have even dropped today because it drops every day based off of how long they've been under observation and being checked. So, as I've stated many times, we're treating every inmate that walks through that front door as if they're positive, and watching and being vigilant for any symptoms that they present. And if they present, we test them. But right now, I think the number is 24 in Alice, unless you got a different number of that.
That's the last update. Yep, just yesterday morning.
Wow.
We'll get a new one this
Now
morning.
that's a low number. I mean, I'm astonished because we heard these big numbers, 80, 90, 100, we heard these big numbers, but you mentioned something that's very important that kind of dovetails into a discussion I was having with Eric Gilmore earlier, in that after the diagnosis, something's going to happen, right? You're either going to get better or, in a very rare circumstance, you're going to die from this. But at some point, you go through the 14 days or whatever the case might be, and you're done, right? So I'm hoping on a larger scale on our dashboard, we can show that, because having that 8,000 number hanging out there, which really as a percentage of our population of 320,000 is small, but it's even smaller when you take out all the ones from March, April, May, June, July that have already resolved. But for whatever reason, there seems to be hesitance to do that. Allison, you're a medical professional. Why do you think that is? Why do you think bureaucrats don't want us to list the recovereds? There seems to be resistance.
So, of course, this virus, you don't know who it's going to get sick and who it's not. It might take longer for someone to cure it than, another blood type. I know it's dependent on that sometimes. So it's kind of hard to tell.
Interesting. Well, I mean, I know I kind of put you on the spot with a little political question. I threw a zinger at you. It's okay. I get it.
I just
go ahead, Jen.
On the topic of the jail and what all they're doing. Chief Powell and Allison can both speak to this. We did get them several of those infrared cameras so that they can also test without, they can test more rapidly. Have inmates come through. So I just want them to kind of mention how many of the infrared cameras they have and for temperature testing and what they're going to be doing with those.
Yeah, I actually have 5 of them. IT just got them, was ghosting the computers yesterday or imaging the computers yesterday, that will They'll be deployed throughout different various locations throughout the facility. That way we can continuously monitor both our staff and the inmate population's temperature, because these low-grade fevers that are connected to this, most people don't even recognize it, that they can be carrying a low-grade fever and not even warm. So once we put these in place, which should be hopefully by Friday, they'll be staged throughout. As the sheriff's office alluded to, they were on back order, so it took them a little while to get here, but we do now have them, and they'll come into play to get us through the backside of this, hopefully.
And
Hey,
Allison,
Dawn and Mark. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Allison, will that be helpful for you guys in
Oh,
terms
yeah.
of monitoring entire pods?
Yes, that would be wonderful because we can even put them in the hallways. We can catch them when they're not coming to medical. They could be going to court and we could catch someone.
That's fantastic. And it'll actually pull out one guy. What was he look red while the other ones look white?
It's kind of unique. Imagine people going through a queue and there's boxes on everybody's face and they're green and all of a sudden there's a red one. And that's how it works.
Oops.
It's that simple.
Wow.
And
Well, that's pretty cool. Hey,
It literally shows the temperature on the screen.
I was going to see Marcus and Dawn. I mean, we work very closely, the sheriff's office, with Chief Powell and his men over at the jail. When you pick up a suspect, for whatever the infraction might be, whatever the case might be, at what point do the men of the sheriff's office do any kind of an initial assessment of the suspect? Do they take a temperature? I mean, so at what point during the handoff process between apprehension of a suspect by the sheriff's office and then turnover of such a suspect at the jail, at what point is the initial analysis done? Does the sheriff's office do any kind of checks before they bring them over to us?
Yes, it initially starts with our dispatch department. They ask a series of questions before the officer even arrives at the scene. Then when the officer does arrive, there's a second set of questions they go through to determine at what protocol they need to use and extra caution. And also, as Marcus spoke to earlier, getting their Tahoe sprayed down after that suspect has left their vehicle, if there's a possible COVID exposure, also notifying the jail when they get there of the possible COVID exposure.
So that handoff, I'm sorry. If I
Megan.
made an handoff at the booking operation, the initial screening is conducted while the law enforcement officer, regardless of agency, is still present. So if we detect a temperature there that they may have not had, they're going to know that this individual is walking through with a temperature, or they may not disclose it to the LE and tell us, yes, hey, I've got 3 family members at home that are positive, and we relay that information back to them.
Now, here's a question that here's a dumb question. So the guy got arrested. He obviously was suspected of doing something wrong. So he's been apprehended. He's been arrested. He's brought to you, but he's on fire with a fever, got the sweats. He's obviously got COVID. Now what? Is that when they bring you in, Allison?
No, we immediately turn them around and the law enforcement takes them to the hospital. We don't accept them.
Okay, good. So they're not coming into our jail if they're infectious. Okay,
and it's not just the infection. It's not just the infection. If they come in and they have an obvious injury, or the blood pressure is elevated through the roof because they're intoxicated or inebriated or something, we reject them. They take them, get them medically cleared at the emergency room, and then bring them back.
Interesting. Well, okay, I didn't know that. That's an interesting point. I mean, maybe it's something I should have known, right? But I didn't. So say this guy is a very violent, dangerous individual. So you're not going to take him. We're not going to bring him into our jail. Obviously, you're going to take them to the hospital. They're not equipped to look out for a guy who's very violent and dangerous. Then what happens when they get to the hospital? Do they have
if they're admitted into the hospital, then we go take custody of them once they've been admitted or look to be good, like they're going to be admitted in the hospital. We will come to what's called a mobile booking on them. We'll come over and book them in the emergency room and wait and take custody of them at that place to relieve the officer and let them return to their duties back on the road.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Chief, can you speak a little closer to the mic? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry.
Or maybe turn it. No, you're all right. Okay, so this is interesting. So they go to the hospital. It's a dangerous individual, violent, but we send our people, our corrections guards, to the hospital. The deputies leave. So how long do we have to stay there? Are our people staying at the hospital?
We'll stay at the hospital. We routinely have individuals that are hospitalized, and we maintain security on them while they're hospitalized. It's not uncommon for us to set on surgery recovery for days, if not weeks, sometimes, depending on the contingency of the injury or the illness. We've had cancer patients that we've set on all the way through stage 4 in the end, depending on the individual. It's just part of our profession. It's not uncommon.
Wow. Let's talk about the guys that are now going back in the field. I mean, one of the greatest assets to having the inmate workforce and the crews, they really help to keep our county roadways clean. And when they had to take a hiatus, I mean, we started getting phone calls, right? Because you get used to a certain level of service. Citizens get used to seeing clean roadways. And then suddenly, we don't have the inmate work crews out there. My understanding, Chief, is that we now are engaging them, getting them back out on the street. The question I have is, how do you keep the inmates? They put them in those vans, they drive them out there, they got the little porta potty on the back, whatever. But how do you keep them socially distanced on those little vans when you take them out? What sorts of protocols are you using to keep the inmates safe?
Well, the same inmates that are in the back of these vehicles, they're wearing face masks as well while they're being transported. But however, you got to understand, it's kind of like your family. These individuals live with one another all day long, so riding in a vehicle for them is not an issue. Our staff, while they're transporting them, obviously have their PPE on as well. And unfortunately, it's just the nature of the beast. We are literally side by side with many of our inmate population, especially in the road crews that we run and the different areas that they provide services at.
And so because they live together, they wear the mask. It's not an issue, them riding in close quarters. Are we back up to full strength with the number of crews that not West, but you guys and the roads? I know you coordinate with the work that you do. Are we back up to full strength with what we had before?
Yeah. We're probably another week and a half before we go up to 100%. Some of the individuals that we pull off of the crews throughout, parks, roads, drainage, sanitation, haven't returned yet fully. Everybody got a little piece back to begin with, but the staff that we pulled back were supplementing back at the main jail as well. So that duration is returned 50% last week. Another 8 officers. Next 2 Mondays. Next Monday will be the last Monday, and they'll all be back by the end of the week. So we'll be fully strengthened by the 15th, I should say.
Well, that's really fantastic news. I mean, I didn't know what to expect when I asked that question, because you always worry about staffing, particularly in some of these difficult jobs like law enforcement and corrections. I know we have a lot of current openings for corrections, and I'm assuming, but we have the HR director. How is the staffing at the sheriff's office, and has COVID-19 impacted y'all's staffing out at the sheriff's office?
The only impact, I guess, that you would see on our staffing is going to be the actual individuals that report to the administration building. We have put a couple of units working strictly from home, and then reduced staff in areas where part of the staff is working in the building and part is working at home. So we're still operating. It's just we may not all be in the same building at the same time.
And do you, I know, Dawn, you are the HR director, right? Or is it? Yeah, you're the HR director. How many openings for deputies in Escambia County do we have right now? Just off the top of your head, is there a number? Is it a couple dozen, or are you guys fully staffed up?
We have 7 openings right now.
7.
Wow,
Okay.
that's impressive.
That is impressive, because I know attrition has been a big problem. I know that we worked closely with the sheriff and went through some negotiations and got you guys a pay plan to help with some of the compression issues that y'all had. But that's a surprising number. I mean,
Yes.
Only 7. That's fantastic. Chief, what about us at the jail? How many openings do we have over there for corrections guards?
Our officers, we're not including the new facility. We're running close to probably 30 vacancies right now in correctional officers. So needless to say, our staff are working through, and we're managing.
So 30 vacancies. I mean, that's incredible. Let me ask a dumb question, but maybe people are watching. I mean, obviously it's a tough job, but it's a career. I mean, you make a career out of it. It's rewarding. There's a pension. There's excellent benefits, things of this nature. What is maybe a kid's getting out of high school, he wants to work with people, would consider this. What sorts of credentials, what sorts of requirements are there to become a corrections guard in Escambia County, Florida?
Well, our officers, first of all, have to pass a have a high school diploma, U.S. citizenship, no violations of law, pass a lie detector test, a CVSA voice stress analysis, equivalent to a polygraph, if you will, drug-free, and have a willingness to work. The biggest thing that we're seeing is that if you talk to anybody who has had a profession in corrections, and having done this for 30 plus years now, none of us grow up wanting to be a correctional officer. We stumble into the career one way or another. It's just a profession you don't think about. Most people, you see firefighter, law enforcement, or medical. Most of us stumble into this profession unless you have a family history of it, and then you plan that cycle. But most of us end up into it in very, very unique ways. And it's a very lucrative and fulfilling career. It's just getting people into it. Once they get a taste of it, they either like it or hate it. I mean, there's nothing in between.
You also have the benefit of the high risk. You have high risk and you can also retire early. So those are two other benefits. So if you get in, I mean, quite frankly, if you get in at 20 to 22, by 50, you're retired. I'm just saying. So I think there are other
amazing.
High risk retirement is probably the biggest lure that keeps people in law enforcement. It's definitely not, you'll never be rich or wealthy, but you'll be fulfilled in other ways. And as Janice spoke of, our high risk retirement through the FRS is one of the biggest keepers of people in the profession for sure.
No, it's an amazing benefit. It's incredible. You work 25 years, you retire at 75%, I believe is what it is, or you go 30 years, you retire at 90%. I mean, and like you said, if you start at age 20 years old, I mean, bang, 50. I mean, that's younger than I am now. I could just imagine being retired, how nice that would be. So 30 vacancies. I think that's something, particularly as our economy, that's a scary thing. And I really want to hit on that with all of y'all and ask your opinion about it. We saw the report on the GDP. It dropped more than ever in recorded history. And so, and then we got the tourist sector. Traditionally here in Pensacola, after Labor Day, it really trails off, and a lot of folks, lose their jobs or get their shifts cut substantially. We got COVID now. From a crime perspective, talking about hiring people, I mean, as this economy slips, we ought to be able to fill those 30 positions, Rich, especially if there's not some special certification. You train them on the job? How does that work?
No, they actually have to be state certified. We will either send them through the academy, and they take a.
We do that. We pay to do that.
We will pay for their the academy training, or they come from another agency already certified, and that is a definite lure for a young 19-year-old or individual who's straight out of high school that doesn't have to amass that cost, which from a recruiting perspective is definitely an angle, if you will, that tell people, look, we will give you a career, we'll get you on that path. But the duration and we're in a cycle right now in our department that we have a lot of people that are still retiring from the growth that happened almost 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago within Escambia County. And we're seeing that cycle out right now where a lot of my senior staff are either in drop or going into drop. And we're planning for that succession right now.
Now, as this economy, we're in a recession, they don't know exactly, we hear different things based on which political party is given the facts, but there's no doubt that if we have a second wave or any sort of complete lockdown again, and I certainly hope that does not happen, that the economy could get worse. And I know, so I'll ask the Sheriff's Department folks, have your officers reported like an uptick as people lose jobs, as people get a little more desperate? Is that driving more petty theft, burglaries? Have you guys seen a difference in the number of apprehensions that y'all are making over at the Sheriff's Office?
I believe that the numbers have gone down on some of the offenses from our staff meetings that I've been involved with. I've heard a lot of talk on the DUIs, maybe because the bars and such are not open at the time. The rest of the numbers, the petty thefts and things like that, I couldn't attest 100%, but I think they're remaining pretty constant. And, car burglaries, things like that, just from the reports that I've seen come across my desk.
Interesting.
And I can tell
what about you, Chief?
Perspective on the intakes, is that the numbers for the misdemeanors are way down. What we're receiving through the front door are primarily felony cases and charges that have to be resolved. And if I may give one shameless plug here for a second, we are currently recruiting for our September Academy right now in preparation of opening a new facility. So if anybody's out there that has an individual that is unemployed or looking for work that wants a long career, go to myescambia.com and click on the careers page.
And is there a physical, this is a dumb question, I don't know all the rules, but you can correct me. I assume there's probably an age requirement. I can't be, drawing, Social Security and come be a guard, right? I mean, there's obviously.
Well, oddly enough, we've had an 80-plus-year-old work as a correctional officer before. Now, those are far and few between, as you can imagine, but there is no age requirement or maximum age of paid, as well as there is a physical expectation and ability, but that comes and goes a little bit. You have to pass the entrance exam to get into the academy still. That does weed out a few people right there because it's a physically demanding profession.
Wow. So if a guy or a gal are interested in pursuing this, there's a September class. When would be the deadline for them to come see us at the county and make an application and do the initial background checks? When would that need to happen? Pretty soon, I'm assuming, right?
Absolutely. We will cut it off probably mid-month because we have to have them seated and prepped and planned and go through the hiring practice and background screening, the CVSA, the voice stress analysis, as I spoke of, all the requirements to qualify before we even do a job offer.
Wow.
Yeah, and
well, I know
a shameless plug. We want to do another shameless plug for the fact that we're going to have a new facility soon.
Yes, we are.
To operate in, and
it
so
will change. I said it will change the way that we operate in corrections. The limited space that we've had here in Escambia County for quite some time has not allowed quality programming for quite some time and do some meaningful rehabilitation and offering to the inmate population to try to break that cycle that many of them are in and give them an opportunity to see a different side of themselves and opportunities as opposed to I've literally seen people that have done their entire career and grow up with the same inmate population coming and going inside the jail. And we've just got to break that.
Yeah, that's tragic. That's a real tragedy. Well, I've had the good fortune of being able to tour that jail within the last several weeks, and it's gonna be amazing when we finally get that thing done. It's gonna be incredible. It's weird to get excited about a new jail, right? But I just know for the inmates, it'll be a safer environment for them. I think there's a lot of high tech that's going to be there, and then obviously for the employees that have to work there and go in there on a day-to-day basis, it's going to be a very incredible facility. I want to spend the time I have remaining. Janice, I apologize. We kind of got overcome this morning, but I was remiss in not giving you an opportunity to bring an update from the county, and then I have a specific question for Allison. So Janice, why don't I hand it off to you? Give us an update on the county? Anything you think is super important?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that yesterday I sent an email out to all the employees. I try really hard to send them at least one a month whenever we've had different issues, like with the George Floyd, making sure that if anyone was having issues that they knew that we had mental health available, that people didn't have to, deal with the things that were going on nationally by themselves, that we were available with the EAP. And then also throughout COVID, we've talked about how the county is going to operate and just make sure that our staff is continuing to look out for each other, look out for our vulnerable or those that, those with compromised immune systems or those that are 65 and older. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that I reiterated to the staff is how we're operating as county employees, where we're requesting our employees to wear masks when they cannot socially distance, physically distance from others, when they can't physically distance from our visitors or guests into our facilities. We are requesting that folks will wear masks when they come to animal shelter, the libraries, community centers, and the COC. The COC is our area that does building inspections and development and things like that. So we're requesting that individuals will. I would say we were already at 95% plus compliance already at those facilities, but I just wanted to reiterate that. We're also encouraging our employees when they're in the break rooms not to huddle up and gather up. I think people were getting a little lax about that. So, and then at ECAT in particular, it is mandatory for them to wear, because they don't have as much space to spread out, it is mandatory for them to wear their mask in the building and while they're driving buses. The buses, that's been mandatory since April. I know that Chief Powell has made it mandatory at the jail, and then our EMS and fire have also made it mandatory whenever, you know, they're either in vehicles together or on a call, you know, things like that. And then any of our employees where we have more than one in a vehicle, we've asked them to wear masks. So we are staying really vigilant in terms of trying to protect our employees, because just as the sheriff's office has, you know, we have responsibilities to the citizenry and to the public to provide daily services, because that's what keeps our society, for lack of a better term, going. And it's also that normal that I think people need to continue to see, that, you know, we're not falling down on providing those services. You know, like you said, everyone noticed when the inmates couldn't help out with whether it be code enforcement,
they did.
or cleaning the animal shelter, or, you know, helping out. And I did also want to say something about Allison and her staff. The medical staff that we have at the jail, I mean, they are absolutely amazing what they do on a daily basis, because they already consider infectious disease something that they have to consider every single day, before COVID, right? Meningitis. I mean, there are all these other diseases that I don't necessarily know the names of. So I just want to mention that they're heroes all the time. We're just hopefully able to shine a light on them and what they're doing right now throughout COVID, because we all know it a little bit more. And I just appreciate them. I will say that every time that Chief Powell and I have asked them to provide extra services, particularly as we've heard to the women's unit at the Work Release Center, she and her team have gone in there. They've taken temperatures of every single person. They've checked them. They've checked the daily sick calls. You know, and as we had a question yesterday from Councilwoman Myers about the way we treat our pregnant inmates, she and her team have just been on top of every question we've had, every week, every request we've had. Their meetings with DOH and following the CDC protocols. And I just want to give a shout out to them and what they're doing. People just might not know who they are, but they're extremely vital to the services that we provide to our community. And I just want to say thank you.
Well, Allison, you know, I appreciate that. What a nice thing to say, Janice. I know they do a very important function over there in the jail. And just so folks know, and you know, being on the county commission, you learn every day you learn new stuff, and it's just incredible the things that you learn. But obviously, early on, we found out pretty quickly that one of the biggest cost drivers at our jail that we pay for as county taxpayers and the Board of County Commissioners is the medical. So we've got 1,400 patients. So Allison, just real briefly, I mean, before COVID even came around, I was astonished at the sorts of treatments that we have to pay when they're incarcerated. We have to pay. And so if they have, you know, hepatitis or AIDS, you know, these drugs are incredibly expensive, and we're footing the bill. So give the viewers a sense of like what the health is of the jail population.
So, I mean, anything that's ongoing outside of the facility, we try to continue. If someone's on chemotherapy, if they're going to their oncologist, if they have a wrist fracture that needs surgery, we get them back in with that orthopedic. Medications. Medications are costly, and unfortunately, we don't have insurance we can file it under, and so we're paying with those. And I mean, we try to continue and do everything the best that we can.
And I know a number of years back we had the issue where we had deaths at the jail, and that became a big lightning rod. Before I got on the board, you know, it's still something we're very attenuated to. We obviously don't want anyone to die. Unfortunately, in real life, people do die, and I know that you deal with patients. Prisoners, inmates that have tremendous health issues. Some of them are addicted to drugs. Some of them are morbidly obese. They've got other underlying, the new term everyone uses, comorbidity, right? So how do we, I mean, it's an impossible situation. Any death in the jail, you know, it sends up a red flag. Oh my gosh, what happened? But it could be something as natural as a person in his 60s or 70s having a heart attack. It was going to happen whether he's in our jail or not. But it makes it difficult for you. Tell us about the pressure you're under to keep everyone healthy there.
Yes, and so we try to reiterate that communication is key. Some people aren't truthful when they're coming in about their cardiac issues, about their medications. And so the more communication that they share with us, it helps us help them.
Great answer. Well, I hate to say it, but it's been an hour already. I'm amazed at how quickly an hour goes when we do these things. I want to give a special thanks to the sheriff's office personnel who joined us this morning. I regret the fact that we couldn't have the sheriff, but we'll get him back on when he's available. But I want to say thank you to Don Braswell, who's the HR director. Thank you for being here this morning. I want to say thank you to Marcus Faulkner, who is the risk manager for the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. Thank you both for taking some time this morning and answering some very interesting questions for us. I want to thank Allison Burgess, who is a hero working at the jail on the front lines as a nurse practitioner. I want to thank Janice Gilley for having the toughest job in all of Escambia County, constantly getting beat up every day, more than the commissioners. And of course, Rich Powell, the Director of Corrections, thank you for being a professional and for all that you do. It's a tough job you got. I mean, you guys all have tough jobs. I still think Janice has the toughest one, but I could be wrong. But I hope everyone has a great morning.
Just for the record.
Yeah, I believe that. Well, I hope everyone has a great rest of the day, a great rest of the week. Appreciate everyone being here. We're going to have a great show next week as well. So just remember 6:30 a.m., Coffee with the Commissioner. We're going to learn a lot, and we're going to keep talking about this COVID-19 and how we're facing it and what we're doing to get past it. So everyone have a great week. Thanks for being here.